Though the average passerby may not know it, these works, which adorn landscapes throughout New England, have one thing in common. They were all sculpted by the same man. In the late 18 and early 1900s, many communities on the East Coast commissioned him to honor their war heroes, literary greats, political and religious leaders, and pioneers in the arts and medical profession. Thousands still walk by his statues every day, but how many of them know the story behind the carved figures, or the man whose deft hands immortalized those deserving of our remembrance? The sculptor's last name? Pratt. His first name?
And I said, and this sculpture was done by a woman named Bela, and I raised my hand, and I said, actually, he's my grandfather, and he was a male, the name Bela.
In addition to Bela Pratt's monumental sculptures, he carved numerous busts, and 18 of the world's most beautiful nudes, including The Bather, The Dance, Water Lily Girl, and Adoration. How was he able to sculpt with such strength and intensity on the one hand, yet with such warmth and tenderness on the other?
I so enjoy sculpting the female figure that I guess you could say I've been caught in the nude.
First of all, he started sculpting at a young age. Well, maybe not that young, but close. The real answer may lie in his relationship with the two most important women in his life: his mother, Sarah Victoria Whittlesey Pratt, and his wife, Helen Lugarda Prey Pratt. His mother provided the nurturing and strength Bela needed after his father's untimely death at the age of 42, when Bela was only 7 years old. At Rock Lawn, their home in Norwich, Connecticut, his mother had earlier noticed that Bela enjoyed modeling beeswax and made figures that were far better than the average child should be able to make. As Bela grew older, he attended Norwich Academy, studied at the Yale School of Fine Arts, where he was awarded the Ethel Childs Walker Prize for his Amos Alonzo Stag, entered New York City's Art Students League, and won first prize for his Orpheus while studying under one of America's most prominent sculptors, Augustus St. Gaudens. In September of 1890, with his mentor's blessings, Bela left New York for a 2-year stay in Paris to broaden his artistic horizons, first studying at Académie Julian in the morning, the École des Beaux-Arts in the afternoon, and at the Colarossi in the evenings. Busy though he was, Bela was the responsible, dutiful son, writing his mother every week without fail, complete with drawings and colorful descriptions, a practice he never abandoned. His hard work quickly paid off as he won medals at the Beaux-Arts and Colarossi, becoming one of the most successful American artists at those Parisian institutions. Still, Bela worried that he hadn't won more medals. His mother's response? "I can't believe that you really care so much about not getting a second medal except for fear that we will be disappointed. But just remember this, nobody can make us believe that you don't deserve it. It is only that we think less of the judges." Bela's first opportunity to make a name for himself was in October 1892, during preparations for the Chicago World's Fair. There were numerous sculptural commissions being awarded, but getting one wasn't easy. After nearly 4 suspense-filled months, thanks in part to a little pull from St. Gaudens, Bela was finally awarded the contract he'd been seeking.
The full-size group is going to be much better than the study. The colonnade is not single, but I think 4 or 6 deep, and supports a roof under which lunch will be served in the summer. The effect is the finest in the whole show. Everyone seems pleased with my figures, even common people.
On Saturday morning, June 24th, 1893, Bela opened his mail and read,
Dear Sir, on behalf of the School of Drawing and Painting at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, I beg to offer you the position of instructor in modeling.
Bela immediately accepted the position, which quickly advanced his social standing as well as his career. He was asked to join Boston's exclusive Tavern Club, and he was also commissioned to design a medal for Harvard's president, Charles Eliot,
4 medallions of the seasons for the new Library of Congress,
spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and a victory figurehead for the battleship Massachusetts. One of Bela's projects that had the most far-reaching consequences came about purely by happenstance. One day, while riding on a Boston tram, he noticed a woman with 2 charming young daughters. He had no idea that the woman was the daughter-in-law of Dr. George Shattuck, who was dean of Harvard Medical School and founder of St. Paul's School in Concord, New Hampshire. He simply found the woman's daughters most charming and interesting.
I couldn't help looking at them every minute, and I was possessed to ask their mother if she would let them pose for me. It was a crazy thing for me to do, but I guess it can do no harm.
It did no harm indeed. Not only did the young girls pose for a medallion, but Dr. and Mrs. Shattuck wanted to buy it. They also invited Bela to their home for dinner.
Those Shattuck people have been so kind to me that I've decided not to take a cent for the medallion under any conditions. When I told them of my determination not to take anything, we almost had a row. Finally, we agreed to leave the matter to the arbitration of Mrs. Shattuck's father, old Mr. Lee.
It was finally settled that Bela would allow them to pay for his expenses only, but that was not the end of it. Bela later sculpted Mr. Lee, Mrs. Shattuck, and Dr. Shattuck. Bela's personal life moved forward as well after meeting Helen Prey, the young woman who would fulfill nearly his every need as both a companion and fellow artist. She had gained inspiration from her mother's drawings long before she became Bela's student, and he was soon writing his mother about Miss Prey.
One girl, Miss Prey, does very good work, and in other ways is the nicest girl I have met in Boston. She was one of the charter members of the class and has never missed a day. The last figure she did was good enough for anyone, and the best work done in the class since it was started. I should not be at all surprised if I married Miss Prey.
Bela and Helen were married on August 11th, and on August 12th set sail aboard the SS St. Louis. Trips across the Atlantic in those days could be unpleasant and perilous, but in this instance,
we have neither of us been the least bit seasick, and the weather has been almost too good to be interesting.
Not everyone was so lucky, as Bela stated toward the end of their journey.
There were 2 days when only about half the people came to meals.
They brought 2 cameras to document their journey, and Bela was quite thrilled to find himself on the ship's list of distinguished people on board, along with fellow sculptor Daniel Chester French and his wife, and the Secretary of the Navy.
We are safely in Paris, you see, and at present are living in great style.
Bela sent photographs to his mother as quickly as he could get them developed.
Here's a picture of Helen on the balcony of Hotel Maurice, overlooking the Jardin des Tuileries. She has on her new hat and cape. The buildings you see on her left are the Tuileries Palace and the Louvre. From here we could see almost all points of interest, including the Tower Eiffel.
The following Sunday, they went for their first sightseeing tour of Paris.
We went through the Tuileries and came to the Place de la Concorde. with a big Egyptian obelisk in the center. You see a tall ladder back of one of the lampposts? That was being used to fix the illuminations to celebrate the Tsar's coming to Paris. This shows the Champs-Élysées, which runs to the Arc of Triumph. Almost all the cart horses in Paris are driven tandem, one in front of the other. You can just see the first of a string of 4 going across this photo. French kids are very cunning, and they are usually prettily dressed. Here is a very common sight on Sunday. All the orphans parade the streets, all dressed up clean and slick. They always have nuns with them. And here we have Helen crossing the Champs-Élysées. You can see we have been getting nearer the arch all the time. And the next shows it as large as the camera would hold. Coming home, we only took a few pictures. We have hired our studio, the one the McMoneys had for 9 years, and we are going to live there. Our address will be 16 Impasse du Mans.
Two sculptures Bela had been working on in Boston were shipped to Paris so he could finish them there. One arrived unscathed, a recumbent effigy of the Reverend Dr. Henry Augustus Coit, the first rector of St. Paul's School in Concord, New Hampshire. The other piece, Orpheus, wasn't so lucky.
The lyre of Orpheus was smashed, so I'm going to remodel him for the salon.
Bela was growing concerned that he had yet to receive payment for a figure he made for the battleship USS Massachusetts before his journey to Paris. He considered it his duty to help his family financially and planned to send $500 to his older brother Oromel, or Mel for short.
I've not heard anything about the payment or victory, but it must be that I shall hear very soon, and then I will at once send $500 to Mel.
Others were generous to Bela as well, especially Mrs. Shattuck.
Mrs. Shattuck wants to give us $1,500, but of course we won't take it. She also wants to make us Christmas presents, and all she will take from us is photos of each of us.
In November of 1896, Bela and Helen found an apartment at number 6 Rue Boissonade that better suited their needs. It was in a new building on a new street and cost only $180 a year.
Our rooms go right through from front to back of the house and will be a model of what a Parisian apartment should be when we get it all fixed up. I enclose a photo of Dr. Coit's head as it was about a week ago. It is a good deal farther along now, and so is the rest of the figure, but the general character remains the same.
While Bela was concentrating mainly on his Orpheus and Dr. Coit, Helen was doing a little bit of everything.
She is making a bust of me over at the studio in the afternoons. I don't pose at all, just keep right on working and she gets me on the fly. I also send a photo of Helen and guitar. I think it is very pretty, don't you?
Helen and Bela often hosted simple dinners for other American artists studying in Paris, which generally provided the setting for lasting friendships. The couple who became their closest friends in Paris were Alexander Phimister Proctor and his wife, Margaret. Another friend was Solon Borglum, younger brother of Gutzon Borglum, who many years later carved Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills of South Dakota.
He is about my build and weighs exactly the same, 148 pounds.
In March of 1897, Helen was keeping as busy as ever, not missing a beat, even though she was expecting their first child in June.
Helen's bust of me is cast, or being cast. Poor little girl, she has been working quite hard for the past few days, but I am careful not to let her overdo or get the least bit tired. I have taken 4 photographs of Helen with the bust, and one should turn out good.
On May 24th, 1897, Bela wrote,
Bela Lyon Pratt has an honorable mention at the Salon, and now his name will be printed each year in the catalog as having received honors as long as the annual salons last. Oh, how proud his mother will be.
Bela went back to work on his Orpheus, adding a panther, and then eventually removing it. Helen kept busy preparing for the baby, and on June 14, 1897, Bela wrote,
Baby came this morning at 2:15 and is a boy of 8½ pounds. There is news for you. Little Dudley, if the French officials will let us name him so, gave his mother absolutely no trouble at all. I am perfectly sure that there never was such a baby, and we all know that Helen is perfection perfected.
In March of 1898, Augustus St. Gaudens told Bela that Italy was the place to go, where they had a greater appreciation for fine art. Bela thought perhaps St. Gaudens was simply miffed that the French weren't paying enough attention to him. Nevertheless, he soon decided that he too should see firsthand what Italian art was all about.
I was a little disappointed in myself because I liked all the things that one is supposed to admire. It seems stupid to think just as the rest of the world has thought for the past 300 years or more.
By September, they were back in Boston. Bela was again teaching at the Boston Museum's School of Fine Arts, and they had found a little house in Jamaica Plain. A week later, he received the commission for the bust of Bishop Phillips Brooks, longtime rector of Boston's Trinity Church, and the young sculptor's career was off and running again. One of the most agonizing commissions for Bela was a statue of Nathan Hale for Yale University, because it took 15 years for the school to make a final decision. One faction was for Bela, but political infighting intervened time after time, making the project most frustrating right from the beginning. In spite of this, Bela kept forging ahead with new ideas, and there were other things to occupy his mind. In September, he was appointed as National Juror on Sculpture for the Paris Exhibition of 1900, and in October, he became the proud father of another boy, Minot. January of 1900 also started on a positive note.
I have another commission for the same chapel at St. Paul's School. This time it is for a medallion head of Samuel Eliot, who did a great deal for the school. I get $400, and they pay all expenses. More excitement. Yesterday, an architectural firm asked me to do 2 groups, several large figures, and perhaps a fountain for a building they are making for the Buffalo World's Fair.
No matter how busy Bela was or how worried about finances, he never lost his sense of humor, even when it was at his mother's expense.
I enclosed $2 for your birthday. I don't remember just how old you are, except it's 80 or thereabouts. Oh, I remember now. You are 89 years old.
His mother's actual age? 69. Bela also made time for fun. Always looking for a new hobby, he took up golf and had the opportunity to play with some of the best golfers in the country. Work was never far from his mind, however, and he was thrilled to receive another commission from Concord, New Hampshire's St. Paul's School.
It's in memory of the boys and graduates of the school who were killed in the Spanish War. They will not limit me in any way except it must cost $10,000, and it is to go in the open air.
He also received a commission for a memorial to controversial Civil War General Benjamin Butler, a very bitter enemy of Mrs. Shattuck's father. 2 8-foot bronze figures of war and peace were to be placed in the Hildreth Family Cemetery, Lowell, Massachusetts.
It's very strange how work seems to come in lumps. I believe I have very good designs for the Buffalo's Pan American Exposition groups. There are to be 4 little boys, and I shall use Dudley for all of them. The subject given me was floral wealth, and I send a photo of the 4 big figures. The one at the left is Blossom, which is followed by a figure representing wind and storms which destroy the flowers. At the right is Fruition, which is followed by a harvester.
Helen helped with the casting of the little boys, even on August 11th, 1900, their 4th wedding anniversary. Bela's continued success meant that he had to attend more public events to celebrate his sculptures.
That is the worst kind of medicine for me. I should like to sneak down and see the crowd and hear what they have to say, but keep to myself altogether out of sight.
When it came to socializing, few things brought more pleasure than Bela's membership in Boston's exclusive tavern club. Being the only Yale graduate among many Harvard alumni, there was no shortage of good-natured ribbing. Even though Bela was working on 11 commissioned pieces, he still found time for his favorite works, nudes, and his most satisfying moment came when Mrs. Shattuck asked to purchase the first one he completed.
I objected at first, because I thought she was buying it out of charity. But she says that she is not, and that it is really worth all that she's willing to pay for it, which is $300 more than I asked. A good many people have told me it is the best thing they have seen in sculpture in a long time, and it is surely the best thing that I've done yet.
Bela was soon at work on his second nude.
Helen and I will both work on it, so it's sure to be a success.
The next summer, Bela and his family would finally make it to Salem, Connecticut, where his grandfather, Oromel Whittlesey, had founded the Music Vale Seminary, the first normal school of music in the United States. Bela enjoyed visiting there whenever possible.
We went to the family cemetery, and the kids all rode on the lions, just as we used to. The wasps were inside as usual, but no one was stung.
Bela was given work on the electric building for the St. Louis World's Fair of 1903, which didn't actually open until 1904.
I have made all the sketches for the 3 groups for the St. Louis Electric Tower. The top group is Light Dispelling Darkness. The one on the right is Thunderstorm, which is nothing but a woman with 2 frightened children clinging to her. A piece of drapery covers her back and head, and she is drawing it over the children. The other group is Northern Lights, and is treated in much the same manner. The old man is talking to the 2 little boys about it.
In 1903, Bela's family was introduced to the island of North Haven, Maine, where his good friend Frank Benson had a home. The Pratts would spend many summers there over the next few years and make many new lifelong friends. The Pratt family was also introduced to a new home in the Boston suburbs.
It is an older house at 30 Lakeville Place, Jamaica Plain, with a lot of land about it. There are 2 fine elm trees on the east, and at the back of the house are a lot of pear and apple trees. We can't work in our yard on Sunday on account of public opinion, but we do a lot of talking and planning.
The biggest event of 1903 was the birth of another child, a daughter named Helen. There was also a figure of Bishop Neely and a large statue of Governor John Winthrop for New London, Connecticut.
He was a good and wise man, and so an inspiring subject, and he has been dead long enough that I can make him just about as I please, so long as I give him the right character. The costume is interesting and sculpturesque, and my only restriction is not to exceed $10,000.
He continued to move ahead with his nudes.
Did I ever tell you my scheme for making a group of 3 little marble figures of girls, which I have made in the last 2 years? Well, the standing one, the girl against the background, is the central figure, and the girl with the hand up to her head will be one of the side figures. The girl with her hair down, hugging her knees, is the other. The title will be The Three Bathers. Price, $5,000, which I don't expect to get, but I think it will make a good exhibition piece and will be original as far as I know.
Despite Bela's previous success, 1904 got off to a very slow start. Little money was coming in, there were bills to pay, there was extended family to support, and Bela admitted that he was enduring a case of the blues. He was finally commissioned to do a recumbent figure of John Cotton in December, beating out Daniel Chester French and Henry Kitson for the job. That was soon followed by a bust of Dr. Herrick and General Payne.
He has the finest head to model of anybody in the city, and it is the first time I have had a chance to do a live bust. John Singer Sargent painted his portrait in England last year and must have put in a good word for me.
The year 1905 started off much better than the previous year. One of Bela's commissions was a relief of General Stevenson for the Massachusetts State House, and Bela received a positive report from his good friend, Frank Benson.
Benson said a lady who was sitting for a portrait said she knew General Stevenson very well, and Benson said he knew the sculptor who was going to make the memorial to him in the State House. She asked who it was, and when he told her, she said she was so glad, as she had heard of me as the best sculptor in America. Now, doesn't that just suit you? We are all perfectly well. The children and their mama are very happy and pretty too. I'm happy and well, but not very pretty. My hair is turning gray, what there is left of it. However, when I get on all my fine new clothes, I think I must look more or less respectable.
Bela next received a commission for a bust of Bishop Huntington, which one newspaper attributed to the wrong sculptor, but another potential commission would apparently have to wait.
I had a message from St. Paul's School wanting to know whom they should get to take a death mask of Mr. Hargate, one of the headmasters there. I told them Caproni was the man and asked when I should send him down. They answered that they couldn't exactly say, as Mr. Hargate wasn't dead yet.
Works Bela didn't have to wait for included Dr. Donald for Trinity Church, Dick Hodgson, Dr. John Homans, Senator Hawley, and a relief for the battleship Rhode Island. Perhaps the commissions contributed to his renewed vigor.
My interest in my work seems to have taken a new life, and I have the same absorption that I felt in my first years in Paris and New York. I only hope that I may be given life and health for a few years of uninterrupted work. Well, what a selfish letter this is. There is such a lot to live for besides my old mud images.
The next person Bela was asked to honor in bronze was a very inspiring subject, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
I've been working very hard to get the Longfellow medal ready, but it is slow work. The wreath, which forms the border, has 100 leaves on it, and as each one has to be made carefully, it is a long process.
In April, Bela received word that a replica from his Andersonville, Georgia prisoner boy statue was to be placed in Hartford, Connecticut, and shortly thereafter a man visited with Bela about a soldier's monument for the town of Malden, Massachusetts. The following week, a small committee from Malden came knocking on his door.
A subcommittee came to the studio yesterday afternoon, and we had a perfect love fest. Some of the larger committee, old soldiers who don't know a thing about the art end of it, want Cyrus Dolan to do it. But you can never tell. Perhaps I'll get it after all.
There was one prize in June of 1907 that nobody could take away.
Baby Elizabeth Morgan Pratt was born a little while ago, and she is a very husky little creature. The doctor said she weighed 9 pounds. Please remember that we spell Elizabeth with an S. There are several other happenings, but they seem of little account in the light of the great event.
The Prisoner Boy was a hit and led to other commissions.
I have landed the Flathers bus for Lowell and got my full price of $1,000. I was feeling so poor that I was going to write Flathers to accept his offer of $800. Only I happened to be out of postage stamps at the studio. That was the evening he phoned to say that they had decided to give me the work at my full price.
The next year, 1908, continued on a very positive note.
Yesterday I got a letter from the manager of the Higginson bust with $1,000 enclosed, without my saying anything about payment. He reported that one man who knows said that my bust is the best thing ever produced in this country, and one of the best things produced in modern times, which of course is foolishness, but I'm glad there's some foolish people in the world.
Even success kept Bela in a bit of a quandary. He preferred doing small works over big monuments, but the larger projects provided the necessary income to pay expenses.
I doubt if there is one person who makes any kind of living off the kind of thing that I do best and that interests me most. That is, nude figures. I'm afraid I shall have to give up trying to make them, as they cost a lot and bring me nothing but praise and a few medals.
Busts of the clergy, however, usually paid fairly well, and another soon came his way, that of the Reverend Bartol. Since the death of Augustus St. Gaudens a few months earlier, questions had surfaced regarding Bela's higher standing in the world of New England sculptors.
There seems now to be a general belief in Boston that I am in line to fill St. Gaudens' place, and I hope they don't get rid of that notion until they have given me several big jobs. Truly, I have not got the big head. I'm too old and have been through it too often to expect much from all this noise and fuss about my work. Perhaps in 5 or 10 years more, when it looks as if I might not last much longer, they will realize that in some ways my work is really good, not merely a matter of opinion or vogue. If I can keep it up for 20 years or more, perhaps I won't be a failure after all.
Only days later, Bela was asked by a friend of President Theodore Roosevelt's to design gold coins to be valued at $2.50 and $5.
Do you suppose I will really take the design to Washington and show it to Teddy? And wouldn't it be great to be paid with my own money?
The coins were cast with a unique sunken relief that would reduce wear.
Aside from these practical considerations, the sunken relief has a distinct and original decorative quality. The Indian head seems particularly appropriate for use on a United States coin, being essentially American in character, and the headdress adapts itself admirably to artistic treatment.
Other jobs came pouring in. The Virgin for the Paulist Fathers of New York, a relief of Abraham Lincoln for Lincoln Square in Lowell, Massachusetts, a bust of Dr. J.B.S. Jackson for Harvard Medical School, and another of Dr. Carl Muck, conductor for the Boston Symphony Orchestra.
He has been in 37 duels, of which he is quite proud, and he has only 3 scars on his face. But he is a thorough musician and an artist all the way through.
Bela's euphoria was short-lived, for a few days later tragedy struck as his younger brother, Minot, died at the age of 24.
I don't feel there is any use in stirring up your feelings and my own by writing about the awful happening. But it's a comfort to know that Minot was such a good son, devoted husband and father. I don't think I ever in my life heard of anybody who seemed to always try to do the right thing and who was so absolutely truthful and honest.
In July of 1908, Bela was asked to make a medal for Archbishop O'Connell, which had to be completed by the 1st of September. There were to be 100,000 copies struck of small medals and several hundred of larger medals.
The bishop is a very fat man and looks the part to perfection.
The medals were so popular that by October, all of them were sold out. A figure diametrically opposed to that of the bishops was the river nymph, which Helen called Aphrodite because the figure appeared as though she were rising from a wave. But later he changed the piece.
I shall make it tell more of a story. I believe that is what a fellow's got to do to sell stuff. After he has a large reputation, he can make anything he pleases, and people will make up the story for him, sometimes as he intends it, and sometimes quite otherwise.
The latter part of 1908 was most productive for Bela as well, but there was a catch. He was asked to provide bas-reliefs for the new opera house, but when it soon appeared that the project was going to fall through, Bela was actually happy about it.
I had taken such a very low estimate that I had grave fears that I might actually lose money.
To his chagrin, the opera house was soon back on track. One of his favorite pieces of the year was a half-reclining figure of Artemis, goddess of the hunt, which in 1909 he gave to his friend Frank Benson. Another work that excited Bela and caused him many sleepless nights was his river group.
I'm going to call it Kismet, which I believe means fate. The man is struggling up against the current, all his muscles set, his head bowed and face almost buried, reaching blindly forward and groping with one hand. The downstream figure is as nearly as can be a reverse of the other. The girl is floating down with one hand under her head and the other carelessly thrown over her head. This extended hand, which goes out beyond her own face, will just touch the groping hand of the other figure. I don't believe anything like it was ever done before. I'm so excited about this group that I can't sleep nights, and I can hardly wait to get to the studio in the morning. And yet, even if I can carry it out as well as I hope, there will be almost nobody in the world who will understand it or who will know that it is good work.
Bela was wrong about his river group, for people did understand it, and they admire it to this day. When Bela's work on the opera house was officially a go, he was pleased to find that he would be paid more than the initial figure, and he was confident that the work would be most interesting. Business was booming.
Both studios are just as full of work as they can hold, and more is threatening on all sides. There are 6 besides myself, including the models and helpers. I have over $25,000 worth of work going. Isn't that wonderful?
As 1909 rolled around, Bela was so busy with the opera house work that he was ashamed of himself for neglecting some of his other projects, but he felt it was important for the beautification of Boston.
People are getting tired of the dreadfully plain buildings that have been going up lately, and only need to see some really good work of this kind to start using it on public buildings.
His next work was for the Tavern Club when he was asked to design a handsome silver medal to be given to members on the completion of their 25th year of membership in the club. As much as Bela enjoyed his evenings at the Tavern Club, there were times he would rather have been elsewhere.
The Tavern Club had Orville and Wilbur Wright to dinner the other night, and though I am very much interested in flying machines in a general way, I'd rather have been at home piping my oboe. When played by one who knows how, it is one of the mellowest and most attractive sounding of wind instruments. But when I try to play on it, it squeaks in the most unexpected manner and in a great variety of keys.
What would he come up with next? In the spring of 1910, the Boston American named Bela one of the 40 most distinguished men in Boston. As usual, he took it with a grain of salt and a gram of humor.
The American is a very yellow paper, but of course it is right sometimes.
The distinguished Mr. Pratt soon received 3 heroic sculptures.
I believe that no one has ever had a better set of subjects. Old Everett Hale with his Homeric head, Hawthorne with his touch of mystery and Byronism, and the Army Nurses Monument, in which I can put all the pathos in the world without being affected.
Edward Everett Hale was originally bound for the State House, but ended up in Boston Common. The statue attracted large crowds, as did Reverend Hale during his preaching days, but he didn't win everyone over.
It's a great story that my grandmother wrote about when Bela Pratt's sculpture went up. It was so much like the man that this person had to walk all the way around the park to avoid looking at him. I said, that's a great compliment. Couldn't stand looking at him because it looked just like the real. And it's like 90% coat and 10% man.
When Bela first met with the Army Nurses Committee, he said,
I felt like a piece of pulp when they all got through with me.
He expected the commission to go to talented sculptress Mary Kitson.
Without a doubt, she will get the work, as she is a woman, and this monument is for women and of women, so it would only be natural that they should want it by a woman.
He was very happy to get the commission from the governor. And the pathos of it is quite, in my opinion, very beautiful.
On April 30th, a photograph of the model appeared on the front page of the Sunday Herald. The accompanying article declared, "The group consists of 2 figures, a wounded soldier and a nurse who supports him, bending over him with an expression of pity as she holds a cup to his lips. The large simplicity of the modeling is the most remarkable quality of the memorial and gives its distinction to the group. It is to be placed under the main staircase in the State House. Although it was designed originally for a position in the grounds of the State House, the composition fits excellently the place it will occupy." Bela predicted he'd never have another year to match 1910, but he was mistaken, and some of the 1911 works were his personal favorites. His busts of Helen and his mother, and Helen's busts of their children.
You ought to see the head of Elizabeth. It has Donatello and everybody else gone a mile. I have half a mind to build Helen a little studio.
No matter how hard Bela tried to steer clear of the political aspects of the artistic community, sometimes there was no escaping the bickering of those with strong egos in positions of power. The fuss surrounding his figures of art and science for Boston's public library was a prime example, as a feud developed between the Art Commission and the library trustees. In the end,
both sides conceded a little, each saying they did so out of personal friendship for me. I am proud that I was able to keep my temper all through these troubles.
The public was also proud, and this sentiment was best expressed by a fan in a letter dated 1912. "I stayed a long time on the steps of the public library with your noble figures of art and science. It must have been a wonderful joy to create them. It is certainly a great joy, a great inspiration for us others, plain citizens of Boston, to have them to look at and to live with. I have often felt that there is a sort of tragic collision between the scientific and the artistic way of looking at life. It seems to help in their reconcilement, this searching and spiritual vision of yours." Along with the unveiling of Art and Science in 1912, he was busy as ever with the Whaleman for New Bedford, Massachusetts, schoolboy of 1850 for Ashburnham, Massachusetts. And finally, after 12 years of uncertainty, Nathan Hale for Yale University. New Bedford was one of the most important whaling and fishing ports in the world during the 19th century, and the city was excited to have a monument to celebrate its maritime history. There was common consensus that the statue should be placed on the city's library grounds, with the only disagreement being whether it should go directly in front, to the left, or to the right where Bela thought it would look best. Bela's wishes prevailed, and after the successful unveiling, he wrote,
"They are quite proud of him, and so am I, rather. Though I can see many things that I would try some other way, but likely enough it would be no better."
When Bela was asked to sculpt a village schoolboy, he thought it would make a good addition to his list of odd works.
Mr. Ivers Adams wants me to make a little bronze figure of a schoolboy for his native town of Ashburnham. It is to be only life-size, that is, 12-year-old boy size, and he will pay $10,000 for it. He is a very generous man, and he seems to have taken a great liking to me. He owns 2 salmon rivers in Canada, and perhaps he will ask me to go fishing with him.
As for the statue of Nathan Hale, differences of opinion didn't end when Bela received the commission. Nathan Hale was a popular and well-known figure, so it was only natural that people had strong ideas concerning how he should look. Comparisons were made, and Bela's model was measured mostly against an 1890 statue by Frederick McMonnies. One critic stated that McMonnies' statue was too elegantly costumed, while Bela represented Hale as simply dressed in the ordinary garb of the period, which the critic thought more appropriate. Bela especially enjoyed one congratulatory letter.
My dear Mr. Pratt, I think it particularly fine that you have bound the youth at wrist and ankle, because it seems to me that this act of physical binding brings out very sharply, by some touch of genius, that he cannot be bound at all. It seems to me that his spirit almost radiates from his face and pose, defying and despising the bonds in which he finds himself. I love him, and believe that he will be an unceasing and powerful source of inspiration to our young men. Tell Brother Mel that the statue of Nathan Hale is to be placed just outside his room window in front of Old South Middle. I believe that is where Papa's room was too, and also Nathan Hale's.
In 1915, Bela received an honorary Master of Arts degree from Harvard University. The school's governing boards referred to Bela as a sculptor who has taught bronze and marble to whisper his secrets of beauty and power. But was Bela resting on his laurels? Of course not.
48 years old and not a dish washed. That's about how I feel. There is such a lot that I meant to have done before now, and such a heap that I mean to do before I quit, that it seems as if time is getting pretty short.
After having a good start on the seal for the Children's Hospital in Boston, Bela wrote on June 11, 1916,
I've never had work crowd me as it does just now. Here is a list of what I have to do before I can go to North Haven in just about a month. Finish the Brooks and Hawthorne statues, both nearly done, and to see to casting and placing them. Place the Crane Fountain of Ipswich. It is already up there waiting for good weather for the setting, tomorrow I hope. Place the Judson Fountain in Stratford, Connecticut. Finish the tablet for the Vincent Hospital. Finish the tablet for Mrs. Cable. Finish the tablet for the Paynes. Make sketches for 3 fountains for Morton Plant's place in Groton, Connecticut. And then, of course, I have to superintend the work on the Alexander Hamilton.
Despite the projects looming ahead, Bela sensed something was amiss, and even though his doctors had given him a clean bill of health, he felt a need to slow down.
All the sounds and smells seem spring-like. It is odd, but in spite of the lovely weather, to do almost anything, the most satisfactory thing is to do nothing. The great temptation is to sit still and enjoy it all, and that is a sign that I am getting old.
After finishing what would be his final piece, the exquisite Blind Cupid, Bela explained why his mother nearly missed her weekly letter.
I suppose you would like to know what I have, and so would I. All I can learn is that the base of the whole thing is a leaky valve in my heart which gives rise to all my various troubles. The doctors say that they hope it will soon take up its job again, and that I will then be as well as ever.
But the valve did not take up its job again, and when Bela last wrote on April 22nd, 1917, he had little to do but reflect upon his life.
When one is finally placed on the sidelines for a while, it is not so dreadfully disagreeable, for there is so much to watch and think about. I cannot get over the great beauty of these last few days. This is such a nice old world, after all.
Like a ring, like a promise, a spirit moves without a sound, without a sound. We all drink from a cup of water from the spring of our emotions, of our joys, of what love will always bring, always bring. And on the wind I can hear an angel singing, and her voice echoes off the trees. They are ringing, ring, 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 ring. The trees are ringing all around me. Ring,